I see your hand. All right, we're going to try it one more time, this time with sound. Do you have sound back there? Nice. All righty, Calvary Chapel Greenville, Texas, a Wednesday night. It's a cold and wonderful December night. Hey, Ian, how you doing? There you go. I'm staring you down, man. Anyways, all right, we're Kavanaugh, we know that. Wednesday night, special service, like I told you guys before. At least tune in. Learn some deeper dive stuff about the Bible instead of just, surface level Bible stuff. Hey, Tony. And, yeah, no, I announce your arrival, Tony. Don't you feel good? He feels honored and all that stuff now. Hey, Tony, how are the first Wednesdays going so far? He said, man. Anyways. All right. Otherwise, on the normal Wednesday nights, we're in 2 Chronicles, so that's where we are tonight. I know you guys are excited for the second chapter of Asa tonight. Friday morning prayer, 6 a.m. right here. Actually, so it's down there in the fellowship hall, so if you guys, I know you're on vacation. Are you on vacation from school yet? No. So what you could do on your vacation from school time, which starts on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, Friday morning men's prayer, 6 a.m. Most people will say that's way too early, and it probably is. But that's okay. Alrighty, so we got that going on for us. And then, of course, communion, we moved to the first Sunday. And Sunday mornings, we're in the book of Romans. So everything's caught up. Everybody's happy. Let's get going. All right, I'm going to set this over here. I have a space where I can set things, but it's kind of clogged up with things. So no complaints here. Anyways, so we're in 2 Chronicles. You guys know all that information, so you're pretty excited, right? Second Wednesday of King Asa. And King Asa was a pretty good king. I say pretty good because he had his failures like sometimes we all do. You know what? One more thing. I'm going to step out of frame for just a moment. I have to put my timer on. We're never going to get this thing started and going. At some point, I'll restart or I get the screen up here, but I'm kind of unable to for a few moments until I get my arm back. Anyways, so we are in 2 Chronicles chapter 15 tonight. I know you guys all know that. You're all excited about this. Not as in-depth as the other Wednesday nights have been, but that's okay. We're still appreciative of it. And so in 2 Chronicles 15, the overall theme that we're going to see inside of there is Asa listens to God, or listens to the prophet of God, and he follows the directions of God. And so we're thinking, man, this guy's really on the spot. He's going to be amazing. And the next chapter we cross is not going to be as amazing, unfortunately. But he's working really, really well right now. And he's doing the things that we ought to do. And I would say this about us. We all have our seasons in life. You and I have those seasons when we're really clicking, we're really working it, everything's just moving at the right pace. And I mean, just it couldn't better be. I mean, just that's exactly where it is. And then there are those other times, which is most of the time it seems, that maybe we're not just cruising along and clipping along at the right pace. Sometimes if we're working for God and we're like, well, man, for some reason I'm hitting my pace, everything is moving, everything's going the way it ought to go, and people notice that, they say, hey man, I see what's going on, you guys are doing well, there you go. And then sometimes we don't. So right now we're in Asa's good time. Asa's doing quite well, as a matter of fact. And they'd had that small battle with Ethiopia that worked out in their favor because they submitted to God. And so catching us up now to verse 1 of this next passage. Now the first read I'm going to give you is a bit long, but I'm going to preface it by saying this. The Spirit of God comes across this guy who happens to be the prophet, and then this is going to be what he says to him. So we're going to read it in its entirety, and you'll get there. So let's go back to verse 1. The Spirit of God came upon Azariah, son of Oded, and he went out to meet Asa and said to him, Hear me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you while you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For a long time Israel was without the true God, and without a teaching priest, and without law. But when in their distress they turned to the Lord, the God of Israel, and sought him, he was found by them. In those times there was no peace to him who went out or to him who came in, for great disturbances afflicted all the inhabitants of the lands. They were broken in pieces, nation was crushed by nation, and city by city, for God troubled them with every sort of distress. But you, take courage, do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded. And so, you got to think from Ace's perspective, hearing something like this, more or less a glowing review, and kind of bringing up some history, like this hasn't always been this way, but you're not doing bad. And so, okay, and I think we can do this. Kind of a pump up, kind of a, hey, look, let's, you can see that it's working. But so he makes a few statements in there. And the one statement I think that it's really important that we see here, and I think it's important today. Now, we talked about there is a distinction between Israel and the church. But that doesn't apply right here, and I'll tell you why it doesn't apply right here. Because even in the New Testament, we are told to seek. So the first thing that he says, and he says this in verse 2, if you seek him, he will be found by you. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. If we are to seek after God, and you think, well, hold on a second, we don't seek after God, do we? Well, most of the time we don't. In fact, some might even tell you that it's impossible for you to seek after God. I would say this. You and I don't often feel the motivation to seek after God. Not unless everything goes horribly wrong, or, we're trying to look good in front of the other people, those people are, hey, you're the holy people. Yeah, we are, man. But most of the time, we're not really trying to seek after God. We're trying to figure out life, trying to navigate through all the small things. But it's needful for us if we were to seek after God. Now, the Bible talks about this in many, many places. In Psalm 119 and verse 2, it says, blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with their whole heart. So question, are we seeking God with our whole heart? Are we seeking the things of God? You say like, man, dude, I didn't come here for a Wednesday night to hear this. That's fair enough. But are we seeking after God? I would say that it's not our responsibility, but it's wisdom if we do. Wisdom if we do try to pursue after God. And you know what? And I'll say this again and again and again. And you guys will, like when you hit a dark place in your life, everything is going heinous, everything is going weird and bad, you seek after God. Unless it was a church that hurt you, then you're like, I hate everything about the church. And those people exist too. And unfortunately, they're all around us. But so it's usually when we're in a bad situation. But we should be doing this all the time. Hebrews 11 and verse 6. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Now, this goes to a point that I was making just the other day with someone. And it comes down to this. And we actually talked about this last Wednesday too. If we have a presuppositional mindset that says, I believe God, well, then that changes everything. Well, what do you believe in? Well, if you believe that God created the world, if God created the heavens, the earth, and everything that's in them, if he is the one that did that, has the power, showed us how he did it, told us in his book, he's spoken into existence. You find the smallest particle that they can find, and it's sonic in nature. Not talking about the little hedgehog or the place that serves burgers. I'm talking about it is a sound wave. So the very bare bones, the building blocks of our universe are built on sound. Think about that for just a minute. And in the beginning, God created, he did what? He said, let there be, and boom, here we are, right? So my charge to everybody is now this. Believe first God. Come to the Bible with this presuppositional apologetic mindset, or this mindset that says, God is real. I don't have to try to figure out that he's real. I just need to figure out what he wants, how he wants me to approach this thing. Because if we don't really believe in a God, man, why do you even show up to church? That should empty it out, right? So, and then it sounds kind of crazy and a weird thing to say. Like, I know, like we just chased everybody off, didn't I? But I ask this question of people all the time. If you don't believe God exists, why waste your time on a Sunday morning? Why waste your time on a Wednesday night? If you don't believe that. So, well, and I talk to people, I really enjoy the music, or I enjoy the atmosphere, I enjoy talking to people, it's a good networking place and all that stuff. Well, that makes no sense. It makes as much sense, who in here likes to do yoga? Not me, right? You don't do yoga? I figured you'd be top notch on that one. Anyways, but yoga is Eastern worship, right? What person would come into church to go do yoga? Well, you don't. It's like you don't see Hindu people come into the church and say, hey, let me get baptized because I think it's going to make me feel better. It doesn't make sense. If you believe that God is real, then you should be trying to find God. You should be seeking after that. And of course, I encourage people to do it in church, but you need to also do it privately in your own study time and try to dig it out. I mean, there's a lot of things we're trying to learn in this life. And I will say this too, for you guys, this will help you guys a lot. The older you get, the more you look for God. I'm going to say that as truthfully and honestly as possible. The older you get, the more like, man, there's got to be something here because this world is disappointing as it can be. So we need to come to God, we need to come to the Bible with the idea that God even exists. In Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 29, it says, but from there you will seek the Lord your God and will find him if you search after him with all your heart, with all your soul. Again, if you're trying to find God, God will make himself known to you. And I've met people like, well, I said, God, if you're real, and then this happened and that. I'm like, what do you think that was? God doesn't come down and just with a bullhorn in your window and say, this is my reading of the Bible. He puts you in a spot. And now you have to start making decisions. There's actually a responsibility on the human being to actually try to actively pursue God. Isaiah 55 and verse 6. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. And that's wisdom too. I didn't put this passage in there, but how are you going to hear about the Bible unless you have somebody preaching to you about the Bible? That sounds kind of weird maybe. And you say, well, I don't want to go into a church to hear preaching or whatever. But what if, just this crazy idea, this person you work with who's talking about Jesus, or the person you go to school with talking about Jesus, man, he made a difference in my life, this happened, that happened. But how are you going to hear about that unless they actually tell you about it? Sometimes, and I've heard people say, well, it's kind of like a pyramid scheme. That's a bad example. However, if we had the motivation of the people of the pyramid scheme, we might see some action happening. I was talking to a gentleman earlier, and we were talking about a group of people that we shall not name, but they have special underwear. And they travel around the world. You know about the underwear, don't you? It's like, why do I know this stuff? Anyways, the LDS. So you're like, okay, I knew that was kind of weird. But they travel around. They came to me at a truck stop and started talking with two young ladies. And I didn't know they sent girls out, and that poor girl, I'm going to go up to this homeless looking guy in this broke down truck. Game time, let's go. So anyways, they send people out just with ambition to see the world turn to Mormonism. Why aren't we doing that same kind of a mindset with Jesus? With the actual Jesus, not the weird spirit brother of Lucifer that they claim. Matthew 7 verse 7, ask and it will be given you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. So let me say this. If you're looking for God and you don't find God, it's because your eyes aren't open. Maybe your ears aren't open. Maybe you're not paying attention. I don't know what the problem is. But the reality is, if you seek after God, and I know this because I know this from personal experience. Years and years ago, we only had one kid at that time. Poor child. It was him. That was him. And I remember, because I didn't buy into this garbage. It was stupid. And I got tired of hearing people yammering on about stuff. And I knew I didn't say it was stupid at the time. I had some reverence to it. But then one day this guy starts talking about the reality of God. And I'm thinking, man, this guy's making some sense. And God, if you're real. And if you've ever prayed that prayer, that should be all of us at some point, right? Just that idiotic prayer. God, if you're really out there, man, be honest with yourself. Pray that prayer. If you don't know God, pray that prayer. And I'm going to tell you right now, he shows up, and you may not be expecting how he shows up, because he messed my head up so bad, and people were afraid of me for a while. Can you imagine that? Like, there's no way. I was a dangerous person when I first came to Christ. I mean, I would talk to anybody. I'd talk to a fence, like, hey, let me tell you about Jesus, And what was really odd about this, and this is what, I was like, I wish I still had that same passion. And I still have the same passion, but now it's focused on the Bible study and reteaching it. But, man, I would talk to these people, and I would be in their houses because I was the cable guy. And I'd tell them all about this Jesus stuff, and I would put it on there because streaming was new back then. They're like, what is this cool little, like, this little teeny tiny screen on the computer? Wow, what is that, man? That's live TV on your computer. And check this guy out, and check that guy out. And I'm telling all these people about Jesus, man, you got to watch this video, you got to, and what I knew how to do, and I would say this too, however you know how to serve God, God will use that. But these people started watching these videos, and they would say, man, where's a good church? I had no clue. I didn't even go to church. How messed up is that? But I told him of a church where I knew this guy was a pastor there, and he was a real good guy with me. We'd sit out there and just chit-chat on our smoke breaks, both of us with Marlboros, and it's like, yeah, so, no, like, he kind of had his own setbacks for sure, as I did at the time. But he wasn't like the main guy there. He was like one of the assistants or whatever. Anyways, so I happened to scamper to that church one day many moons later, probably a year later maybe, and the pastor, who obviously wasn't a smoker, but he did have some sugar addictions looking at him. Anyways, he comes over and he's, oh, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I say, hey, I'm John. I'm the cable guy. And he goes, you're the cable guy. Imagine the confusion of this poor pastor as these people are coming in. Well, the cable guy told me to show up here. And people were showing up to his church. Man, if we just had that kind of silly zeal. Like, hey, man, here's a great place. You want to find out more about Jesus? And these people were making turns. Like, I had no idea it was having any effect. And he's like, you're the cable guy. Interesting. So we just have to have that. Like, knock, and God will show himself to you. It's really that simple. And so, of course, this is Asa hearing about all this. Now, there was a time, and this was the time of the judges. And we're going to go back to our passage for just a moment in verse 3. We're just going to be in 3. But it says in verse 3, for a long time Israel was without the true God, without a teaching priest, and without law. So they're without those three items that they needed to have. It reflects back onto Judges. In Judges 21, verse 25, it says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so here are these people who have been serving, living, and doing whatever they're doing. King David's passed away. Solomon was a train wreck. And then, of course, everything went downhill after that. And they're doing whatever they wanted to do. And they were living in a life without God. Now, we see that when the kingdom broke into the two pieces, you had Judah and then Israel. So the bottom two, Judah and Benjamin, were the two lower tribes that were there. And then we find out some other people were there also. And then the northern side of Israel took off on their own. And they're like, oh, we're going to be our own Israel. And we're going to do all this stuff. And they just never came back to God. They stayed in idol worship. And so, we got to be careful in that mindset. Without a teaching priest, and man, that's important. You need to have people who know Bible to tell other people about the Bible they don't know. I mean, it sounds dumb. Like, wait a second, that's easy. That's like having a teacher or something, right? Yeah, pretty much. But we have to have people who are willing to give their life to study, give their life to understanding, to growing, to learning, the whole thing, so that they can impart that wisdom to you. And that should be that starter motor we talked about a minute ago. You get motivated. So that little starter motor, if you're familiar with your car, there's a small electrical motor, usually around the transmission somewhere. And he goes, this little piece sticks out and spins real fast. But it's a little bitty tiny gear. And there's a bigger gear on the engine, and it turns and it like that. Once your car is started, is that starter motor doing anything? Zero. It just pulls back and hangs out. It's good to go. It's done everything it needed to do today. The engine's running. Everything's happy, right? My job, as I understand it, is to impart the information to all of y'all, to anybody else or those who stream, as the starter motor, right? So I should give you enough information to make you curious, hungry, and go seek after more information. So that's the mindset of the teaching side. Now, you can come with all sorts of questions. I'll try to answer those. Or the first Wednesdays that we're doing those things now, and those have been pretty cool. I've enjoyed those like crazy. I don't know, you guys, hopefully you have, but we need to try to get to the source and try to understand it. And I will say this too, it's important how we read our scripture. Pay attention in English class, all of y'all, because English class will help you learn the Bible like nobody else. The dictionary, buy a dictionary, or you get one, they're online, they're free. Just click and I Google them, it works out. With a dictionary and a basic understanding of language composition, or how the words and sentences and paragraphs are all put together, you'll learn the Bible better than anybody. I'm telling you right now, it's really not complicated. You just have to have an intellect and an understanding. But they didn't have the priesthood going. Talking Levitical priesthood, Deuteronomy chapter 33, verses 8 through 10, it says this. And of Levi, he said, give to Levi your Thummim and your Urim, to your godly one, whom you tested at Massah, with whom you quarreled at the waters of Meribah, who said of his father and mother, I regard them not. He disowned his brothers and ignored his children, for they observed your word and kept your covenant. They shall teach Jacob your rules and Israel your law. They shall put incense before you and whole burnt offerings on your altar. And it's like, hold on a second. That's craziness right there. God actually assigned an entire tribe of Israel for the purpose of teaching and growing the rest of the nation. It's not unusual for one person to just be kind of that leader, that pushing and that pushing and that pushing. And we need to be kind of following the leader. Let's just say that. Now the third thing they talked about, so we had the without the true God, without a teaching priest, and then now without the law. In Romans, and I know Romans is a favorite of all of ours now, Romans chapter 7 and verse 7, it says, what then shall we say? That the law is sin? By no means. Yet if it had not been for the law, I would have not known sin. For I would not have known what it is to covet if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. For apart from the law, sin lies dead. I was once alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. The very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. For sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, deceived me through it killed me. So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy and righteous and good. So if you don't know what the law is, it's really easy to break something you don't know, right? I mean, that's just as simple as it gets. One of the ways when I try to talk to people or try to encourage people to come to Jesus, we call it evangelism. But one of the ways that I do this is I go through the law. And the reason that I do this is because it has this internal click in our heads and we say, wait a second, I recognize that is probably not good. And then you're thinking like, wait a second, is that true? Yeah. How many people here think it's perfectly good to steal from others? Well, some people are weird. How many of us in here think it's perfectly good to murder others? Well, right. So some of those things are kind of written on our heart. Well, the whole thing's written on your heart. And that's why as you go around the world, you find the laws are pretty much the same at the root. It's when you get to the outside weird stuff, like, you can't wash your car on Sunday kind of laws. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about just the basic fundamentals of life. Don't lie, don't steal, don't warn other people's stuff to the point where you do still. Don't commit adultery, all that stuff. And we hear that, but we have to tell that to people because people don't understand Bible. People don't understand things of the church. People don't understand things of God. They just don't understand it. And so when you talk to somebody, and it's like, well, you're not supposed to tell lies. Well, but it's good to have a white lie. We're in the season of lying. How many people in here today, right now, have lied this season because of some item that is wrapped in colorful paper. Like we've made a thing out of it, man. For years and years, my kids are the instigators of this one. But what was she getting for Christmas? A red toaster. Did she get a red toaster? Finally. But it was always that, deceptive thing. Oh, well, that's fine. That's a white lie. Okay, maybe, but you know what? When it becomes so easy to do it then, it becomes easy to do it later. And when things become really important, it's like, well, I know this gets me out of a pinch when that's happening, so I can just keep doing it. And so when you talk to somebody, and this is what I love the most, you say, how many lies have you told in your life? And they're like, woo. Because they stop, they recognize, and they say, wait a second, there is a problem. See, if we have no understanding or no knowledge of the law, then we do whatever we want to do just with no kind of ramifications. But when we understand the law and understand that there is a law, that kind of puts some guardrails for life. And so we're like, well, probably I shouldn't step across that line. Probably I shouldn't step outside of that boundary. And it should keep us in tune properly with God. And many times we don't do that. And what a foolish thing. I know. But that's kind of how we can be from time to time. Well, we've beaten that speech up as far as we're going to beat it up tonight. Let's go on to what happened. Asa's response to this is really what's good. Verse number 8 says, as soon as Asa heard these words, the prophecy of Azariah, the son of Oded, he took courage and put away the detestable idols from all the land of Judah and Benjamin and from the cities that he had taken in the hill country of Ephraim. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that was in front of the vestibule of the house of the Lord. And so you say, wait a second, this guy says, I'm going to serve God now, and he does it. And again, this is that I just heard the word, I'm just really committed to this, I'm really dead set on it. Brand new Christian is the most dangerous thing ever, right? Like, I can tell you about Jesus, And so this is what's happening to Asa. Hey, man, we're going to get rid of all these idols. We're going to get them gone. And that's the right idea. How good is it to have idolatry in your life? It's no good whatsoever. But do we have idolatry in our life? Yes. You say, well, hold on a second now. I don't have any weird statues or carvings covered with gold in my house that I bow and worship to. And you've seen some people, like they do have their little idols in their house. Again, being the cable guy, you get to see a bunch of crazy stuff. Being the fire alarm guy in apartments, you get to see even crazier stuff. Because people do have idolatry. They do have idols going in their house. And then you say, well, say you're really big into football. That can become your idol. I remember working with these guys in Arkansas, and man, I tell you what, they were really committed to this whole football deal. I was confused. I got there and I was like, what's the big deal about some college football team? The Razorbacks. You know what I'm saying? It's weird up there, isn't it? People are psycho. But I'm working with these guys, and they're talking about the students who play football for the Razorbacks. And they're like, this kid is so many pounds. He can run so fast. And they could tell you stuff about this student at a college. That's creepy. I mean, that's borderline pedo, I mean, they're adults now. But, I mean, that's just weird. They were so obsessed with it. You're hurting now, aren't you? Because you know that's right. But what? It may be a silly thing to say, but I'm just saying, they knew every detail, he is having a bad year this year, he got injured and this happened. And you know what? What happened to HIPAA, man? Don't you get to hide your medical information somewhere? Nope. Because that becomes their idols. You can hear it because the reason I was confused in Arkansas because they don't have an NFL team, right? Because we got the Cowboys. And I couldn't tell you the first thing about the Cowboys. I know Jerry Jones still owns them. That's about what I got. And after that, I don't care. And if he ever sells them to somebody or somebody else takes over, I may pay attention again. What? Texas has two, but we don't count Houston. Well, I'm sure they're doing fine. Somebody has an idol. Anyways. But you see people so consumed with that. And they paint their face. And they do all the weird stuff. And it's just like, man, what is up with that? And you think, well, man, I don't follow football, but you follow something. You're locked into something in your life. Your job can be your idolatry. I mean, you can have all sorts of places in different ways. Like when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you think of, the first thing you're trying to do? And that's what's important to you. It may not be an idol. It may just be stuff that's important to you. Like if I wake up and I think about my wife, am I idolater towards my wife? No. She's probably just laying next to me like, yeah, that's the first thing I see. I don't know. Unless it's dark. Then I'd be like, wake up and go, of course I'm half blind too anyways. But when we look at something and try to, like, we just go on and on and on about it, it can become an idol in our lives. So for them, it was actual little tiny statues or carvings with gold put onto them. And they would carry them. Now this is the awkward part about having a small god like that, little idol. What happens when something bad happens? You got to pick up your god and carry him with you. That's complicated. What if you got a big idol? Man, this gets really hard. Two what? Two people got to carry God. Yeah, I guess, what if you got to get a whole cart? Now maybe we've got to put them in the trunk of the car, strap them to the top, whatever. And it gets really complicated, man. We got to get God out of the harm's way. No, God's supposed to take you out of harm's way. So Asa got rid of those stupid, detestable idols. Look now at verse 9. It says he gathered all Judah and Benjamin and those from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who were residing with them, for great numbers had deserted to him from Israel when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. Now we think about this. The northern tribes, and of course those guys were in part of it. So the southern tribes were Judah and Benjamin, of course, and Levites were there. But then Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon. And you think, wait a second, those are Joseph's kids plus Simeon. And some of those came down? Yeah. Because what happens is they see that things are bad where they are, and they say, well, I want to go where God is. God always says that there's a remnant left. There's a remnant of Jews right now who serve Jesus. There's not a whole bunch of them, in comparison to their actual numbers, but there's always a remnant. And so these people would appear to be the remnant from Ephraim, from Manasseh, and Simeon. And so because of the divide of the country, they came down, and of course Asa's like, I got no problem with you being here. Hey, you don't have any land, but man, we'd love to have you. Come on in, Which goes into another thing when we look at the distinction between Israel and the church. Israel has so much land that they were supposed to get that they haven't gotten yet, but God said they will, and so we trust God before we trust anything else. But so they were just saying, I want to go serve God. Imagine putting yourself in an uncomfortable place or way to go serve God. That's what they did. Wait a second, you mean I got to put myself out, some kind of an obstacle in my life? Absolutely, but serve God. Going on now to verse 10, and they were gathered at Jerusalem in the 3rd month on the 15th year of the reign of Asa. They sacrificed to the Lord on that day from the spoil that they had brought 700 oxen, 7,000 sheep. And they entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, with all their heart, with all their soul. But whoever would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, should be put to death. Whether young or old, man or woman, they swore an oath to the Lord with a loud voice, and with shouting, and with trumpets, and with horns. And all Judah rejoiced over the oath, for they had sworn with all their heart, and had sought him with their whole desire. And he was found by them, and the Lord gave them rest all around. So this part, I'm going to honestly say, I have a little bit of an internal disagreement with. I'm not saying it's not real, it's there. But we need to be careful of the oaths that we make. And you're going to find that the oath, let me make sure I have said that properly, because I don't want, sorry, they entered into a covenant. I was making sure I knew I had the right word, but the wrong place of it. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord. But the question is, with whom? With each other? With others? With God? Because I'm going to tell you something that's really, really interesting. It's better to not vow a vow than to vow a vow and break it. And that's biblical. That's straight from the Bible. The idea of marriage being a covenant is that's important to really understand. Because my wife and I made vows to each other almost 30 years ago. She's so old. She married a 2-year-old. Now you don't believe me? Okay, I'll try again. But we made a vow. We made a covenant, an oath to each other that we were going to serve each other. All this, you've heard that thing a million times. We made that kind of a deal. So we made a covenant before God. Now, did we understand that 100%? No, not 100%, but we did. And then, so, we have to make sure that God understands. We did understand that. So when we break covenant, things tear apart. You show me a house that's been affected by divorce, and I'll show you a house that was just in shambles for many, many moons. Can they come back from that? Yeah, they can kind of come back from that. But there's always some little dissettling piece of it. Covenants are supposed to be taken with some real passion, with some real sincerity, with, just like, this is going to have to be. There was a man, and I should have pulled this passage up and out, but you'll get to hear about it anyways. Years ago, I'm studying through the book of Judges. And man, I keep forgetting this guy's name. As important as this passage is, you'd think I'd remember his name. And he had basically made an oath, or made a vow, and he said, God, if you'll give me this battle, I'll sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house when I get home. So what was the first thing out of his house when he got home? His daughter. And you know what he did? He vowed a vow to God. He let her go out for a season and come back, and he upheld his vow. How horrible is that? That's like the sincerity, severity that we need to see those oaths and those covenants with. And when you're young, you make all sorts of oaths and covenants you don't care about. I had to stand there one time, I swear to uphold and Constitution and all that stuff, and I don't remember it now. I'm not making fun of it. I just don't remember it because I'm old, and that's been decades ago, and I don't care. But I made that vow and that oath, and you know what? I had to hold up because that was a contract written in ink. But when you make an oath or a vow to God, that's different. It makes a bigger difference. So for me, this gives me concern that they would do this vow that they're going to put to death, no matter who it is, if they don't seek God. Now, the reality is they're going to have to put to death their king at some point. If they're going to hold to the rules and hold to the laws. But that kills evangelism, doesn't it? What's this about? We're supposed to love our neighbors? Pray for those who do wickedness against us? How do you pray for them if you're killing them? It's a bad deal. Their heart was in the right place. They were trying to do the right thing. We want to serve God. We want everybody to serve God. And I hate to say this, but serving God is a personal endeavor. You're going to either make a decision to do so, or you're going to make a decision to not do so. And based on the decision that you make, man, that's how a lot of things in your life will roll, to include eternity. And we're not going to get in that argument tonight. We'll come back to that some other day. The whole Kirk Cameron deal. Anyways, people are making too big of a deal out of it. They really should just let the man talk. But that's another story for another day. Not that I think that, but people attack. Christians are really good at attacking others. Have you noticed that? Who's the worst attackers? Christians. We kill our own. So they're serious about this. Verse number 16. Even Maacah, I don't know if I'm saying that name right, his mother was really his grandmother. King Asa removed her from being queen mother because she had made a detestable image for Asherah. Asa cut down her image, crushed it, and burned it at the brook Kidron. But the high places were not taken out of Israel. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was wholly true all his days. And he brought into the house of God the sacred gifts of his father and his own sacred gifts, silver and gold and vessels. And there was no more war until the 35th year of the reign of Asa. And so you see that. But I want you to pay attention to something for just a moment. His mother or grandmother didn't get away with anything. We see it again in 1 Kings 15. Again, they're kind of parallel. In 1 Kings 15 and verse 11 it says, "And Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as David his father had done. He put away the male cult prostitutes out of the land and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. He also removed Micah, his mother, from being queen mother because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. And Asa cut down her image and burned it at the brook Kidron." So you see that he was dead serious about this. Imagine coming against someone in your own family. That can be kind of disconcerting, I would think. And it, obviously caused some level of concern, but he didn't seem to have a problem with that. Now, we did see something in the 1 Kings that we didn't see in 2 Chronicles, but he put away the male cult prostitutes out of the land. I mean, did you see that one coming? I didn't. I mean, well, of course I may have. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, were they really doing that back in those days? Yeah. Absolutely they were. And so you think, wait a second. You're saying that cults are into sexual debauchery? Yeah. Pretty easy, isn't it? So if you think about the things of the Ten Commandments, and let's look at this for just a moment. And this is the things that they weren't hearing until, of course, Asa came around and he's like, let's serve God. But you think about the things of the Ten Commandments. You shouldn't tell a lie. Okay, well, that's against other people. That makes sense. Okay, you shouldn't covet other people's stuff. Yeah, I get that. Don't steal their stuff. Yeah, that makes sense too. Don't murder people. I mean, this is so easy. It's not even hard to think about, right? Like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, the one, you shall have no idols before me. You shall not commit adultery. Like, you can bind two of those things that are obviously against God. If you think clearly about the Ten Commandments, that is the very character and nature of God. So when you do things outside of the character and nature of God, it's pretty hard to sell the idea that you're really serving God, isn't it? Hey, God, I'm serving you. However, there is an illustration given by a pastor one time, and man, I've held on to this for years and years, and it's just an amazing picture. How many of you people have ever been to a lake? A bunch of you, right? How many of you ever been like on a boat on the lake? Or got onto a raft or even an inflatable dill or whatever like that? Because you're all going to recognize this here in just a moment. So you're nervous about getting into the boat because you know it's in that water. You're in Tawakoni, so it's alligators and snakes, right? So that's what I'm saying. You know, she knows it, right? So you take a step on that boat, and you're like, well, I'm not so sure about this. But then the boat starts to leave shore, and you start doing the splits. You're not going to understand this part. You're not Jean-Claude Van Damme, so this ain't going to work out well for you. The guy could do the splits. He made himself famous by doing the splits. Are you trying to give me some signal from one of his movies? Okay, because it looked like that. Bloodsport was one. Anyways, when you did that, I was like, wait a second. That reminds me of what happened there. You go, yeah, like that, but that was the cool method. You don't need to know all that stuff. It doesn't help for the Bible stuff. But you find yourself 1 foot on the boat, 1 foot on the dock, and you're starting to split. At some point, you have to pick one or the other. You cannot be so worldly that you can't serve God. You have to live in the world. You've got things to do. I know you guys got ambition and goals and computery stuff and law stuff and music stuff and whatever all that stuff is. And some of us old people have already nailed down our things and we've been doing stuff. And while we need to focus on our task at hand, we need to do what we got to do, we still cannot lose focus of God. And we have to put that as a priority. And so, yeah, we do have to be in two worlds. But we want our strength on God so that whenever the boat leaves the dock, that's okay, another boat will show up. But we got to stay in the steadiness of God. You have to stay in that place. So it's a big thing that I think we understand all this stuff. Asa, again, he really came to God, had a big, amazing moment, and in his service to God, affected the entirety of the nation. In fact, affected, thank you so much, affected the guys from the northern kingdom to the point they came down and they're like, man, we're going to hang out with you guys because you're actually serving God. And because the north was filled with idolatry, that was a train wreck and a half if they had trains back then. But it was a total mess. And so you see that people will seek after God, and we should be those people. You'll see that people will try to serve and try to understand and try to learn, and we need to be those people also. Again, going back to we have to eat in life, right? So there needs to be jobs, education, all that. That's important. I'm not taking that down. That's obviously an important thing to do. There's a guy, I'm trying to remember who the drummer was for U2. Was it Adam Clayton or is it Larry Mullen? I think Larry Mullins Jr. was the drummer, right? Nobody knows trivia like me. Anyways, the drummer from U2. In a video, he made this comment, and it's like, this has stuck with me. Huh? You say what? You just don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Larry Mullins Jr. Anyways, so they were at Graceland looking at Elvis's stuff. And he said the thing that impressed him the most about Elvis when he was in the movies and all this, because he apparently had seen a lot of the Elvis movies, is not that he was a musician who became a car mechanic or whatever like that. It's he was a car mechanic who loved music. It's like there's going to be a duality in your life that you can't avoid that. It's what it is. But it's the fact that you can combine those two things. Now, do you sing to the engine to make it well? No. You happen to be a car mechanic that loves to play music. And are those people like that in this world? Tons everywhere. They're amazing. Their passion is one thing and their eat is another. That's what happens. Let your eat be your eat and let your passion be God. If you can do nothing else. And I think if you have that winning combination, you can't miss. If you do miss, that's because you started putting too much foot on that boat and you started going off the dock. So there is the second chapter of King Asa. Next week we will not be covering King Asa. That'll be for we haven't talked about New Year's Eve either. Holy cow. It may not be till mid-January before we get anything done around here. What's wrong with you people? All right, let's pray. Lord, we thank you this evening. We're thankful, Lord, that you love us, that you've allowed us to be here. Lord, that you've given us the ability to seek your face, to know who you are, and Lord, to draw closer to you. We ask, Lord, that you would help us to be those people. Help us to be your people. Lord, give us the strength to serve you, the audacity to do it well, and Lord, the patience to put up with those who don't. We need your strength, Lord, not ours. And we would ask, Lord, that you continue to teach us through your Holy Spirit as we go throughout this week. We ask this all in Jesus'